Hey everyone, it's Mike with It's Pittsfield Tonight. I'm going to jump right into it. And, well, we're going to start with Pittsfield politics. So, as many of you know, this is an election year for our city council, our school committee, and our city clerk, who is running uncontested. Many of our city councilors are running uncontested. But we've got 4 wards that have challengers, and then, of course, our at-large races. So last week we had a forum. I won't call them debates because there was no debating. There never is. But we had a forum for our 4 contested wards, which are Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 4, and Ward 6. And the questions asked were pretty, overall, just basic questions that you probably would ask a mayoral candidate. North Street was mentioned. I did see some differences, but they were pretty much generic questions which invoke generic answers. I mean, I hate to say that, but I noticed in Ward 2 there was a slight difference there where one of the challengers believed that we need to do away with it immediately, and he said that money could have been used for other things. That I agree. I agree with. We need to do away with that setup immediately. It should have been done as soon as the public said overwhelmingly that this was not good. They didn't want it. As far as using that money in other ways, that was a grant. That's grant money that was earmarked for that, specifically for that project. So it's not money the city could have just put into something else. It was either we're going to do that or we're not. Now, I think we could have probably chose a different location to put these bike paths, but we didn't. We decided to turn North Street into an obstacle course. And then the other candidate in Ward 2, so that was Charles Cronick who said that. Matt Cudlett said we ought to leave it that way and at least let it run through its trial period and then reevaluate it from there. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that either, because the reason I'm not for that is how bad is this hurting the businesses? And now we're coming into the season where this is their big money-making time of year for retail, and that's not good. That's not, and there's a lot of other problems associated with that that I'm sure many of you have heard on a national level, as far as supply chain disruption and all that. But anyway, so that was a topic. Crime was a topic. Another thing that caught my attention is population. Now, this is confusing to me because Berkshire County overall took another big population hit. We're one of the, I believe, the only part of the state where we're having a continual decline in population. Now, I did a video on this a year ago, and then I did a video on it a year before that on population. So, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the statistics that were available for 2019, and I could, maybe these are estimates, I'm doing more research on it, but these numbers are from the U.S. Census Bureau. So in 2019, the population was 42,142. And the population, we took another loss in population, and now the population is 43,927 for 2020. So that's where I'm confused. Even though we have a continual decline in population, we're up 3,000 people? I'm confused. I'm overwhelmingly confused with that. Or I should say 2,000 people. So I don't know if that they're talking if that population is a continual decline from our 1960 high, which was just around 58,000, 57 and change. But it's not making sense to me because we continually see our school enrollment down and the population down. Now, some people told me, well, Mike, in 2020, people moved in during the pandemic. Okay, so we have a shortage in housing. We know that. We don't really have many available rentals. But, so if people sold their house and new people came in and bought those houses, where did the people that sold their houses go? Did they stay here? And where would they have went? But anyway, I'm digging a little bit deeper into that because those numbers are confusing, and I could see that many of the candidates were confused. Many of them started referencing the fact that, hey, population is up in Pittsfield. And I don't know. That's confusing to me. So supposedly we're just shy of 44,000 people again. And that's amazing because we were about 42,000 the year before. So there's that. But anyway, that was basically it. Most of the candidates out of those 4 for the ward forum, the answers were the same because the questions were overall just kind of generic questions. And like I said, they didn't really pertain to a role of a city councilor, in my opinion. They were questions that you would ask a mayor. But yeah, another big problem, I think, is educating the public on city government. Our city government is horrible with public service announcements, outreach programs to try to get community involved. Basically, community spirit is at the lowest I've ever seen it in Pittsfield. And that's why participation rate in elections and everything is very low. And it's sad because that is on the responsibility of the city leaders, the elected officials, whatever, I hate to call them leaders, but the elected officials. And our mayor, and this ain't a dig at her, but when she decides she's not talking to somebody, she's not talking to somebody. She puts up that wall. I don't know if it's personal or whatever it is, but she's not talking to somebody. And a perfect example is like take the situation in Ward 4 with the cell tower. None of that needed to happen. None of that needed to happen. The first step, if the mayor had just herself personally communicated with the residents in that neighborhood where the cell tower is and talked to them and had an open communication of transparency, but that never happened. They still have not talked to her. They've begged and begged and begged and nope. And I had one of the residents tell me that they even went to City Hall one time to see if they could talk to the mayor for a few minutes, and they were told she's not there or she wasn't available, and then the mayor walked right by them in the hallway. I don't get it. I don't get that attitude. But again, that's a huge problem here, and it does fall on city leaders, elected officials. It is the responsibility of our elected officials to engage with the community, to encourage volunteerism, to encourage community, to get out there. Boots on the ground, be part of the solution, bring community spirit back. But no, we still have this inward fighting. It's horrible. It really is. And speaking of the fighting, you know, I mentioned in the last video about campaign signs. And I've gotten a few messages on that. And somebody said, oh, yeah, okay. Basically insinuating I was lying. Because here's the reality. I have right now 25 GPS out there and 14 trail cams. But hey, don't take my word for it at all. Do your thing. Steal the signs. Whatever you want to do. And I never said what signs or what candidates or any of that. I never mentioned any of that. So I've got some messages that big time red flags went up. Well, I never said whose signs at all. And they're on private property. I have permission to have the cameras where I do. And I have permission to put those GPS units in there. Not from the candidates, from the people whose yards they're in. Because once those signs are on their property and given to them, they're their signs. They belong to them. And that's that. It's on their property. So there's nothing that is wrong with the way I'm doing it. But again, don't take my word for it. Go ahead and keep doing it. And we'll see what happens. Just like I was told on one issue a while ago when PCTV had a video of mine removed, and somebody sent me a message saying, oh, I'm sure you have your own footage of that. If you did, why'd you steal theirs? I didn't. I explained that. But guess who had the video back up 10 minutes later with his own footage? So again, don't take my word for it. Go ahead and keep destroying and stealing signs, and we'll see what happens. So anyway, again, though, that's just a sign of this fighting, this immaturity, it's horrible. And all it does is discourage people from getting involved, discouraging people from running for office, and overall it discourages people from voting. And I think it's horrible. It's time to bring back community spirit, and that's going to be on the city leaders to engage and get everyone together again. We can't keep fighting. All fighting does is divide and hurt the community. That's all it does. So anyway, and speaking of fighting, there's another issue I want to talk about. Our schools. So many of you know that I'm a big proponent of school resource officers. I feel that they're a necessity in schools and an integral part of the solution in maintaining a safe public building. I don't believe they're the solution to every problems in school. Of course, no, I don't think anybody thinks that. But now we recently found out, and it was in our local publication, our local paper the other day, that Taconic High School has one of the highest rates of violence for any high school in the state. I mean, if that's not sending a message, I don't know what is. And our superintendent, even in that article, still is sticking to it, and he said he doesn't believe a school resource officer would have been able to prevent those fights. And that they're putting this study group together, and by the end of the school year, right before the kids go into summer break, that we should get a result. I am just blown away by this. Blown away that the majority of the public, I mean, I've looked at those petitions, and I've seen the parents and the teachers and people who want a resource officer there. Why would you want a resource officer there? In the event of a tragedy, that you have a trained professional, and you're not putting that burden on teachers that are not trained in that type of work. And then there's the whole other aspect of it. I get so sick and tired of when I hear, well, these school resource officers and the police in the schools are the pipeline to prison. And they don't realize how much they're hurting our children, hurting the community, and hurting the future. Because a resource officer and a police officer, when you start telling kids that these people are bad, they're bad. See that police officer, he's bad. That means you go to prison. Who's going to be the next generation of police officers when you keep teaching the children that? It should be programs where engaging. A resource officer isn't just there to discipline, they're there to engage, to work with the kids, to build a healthy relationship, to help guide the future. And I don't know how people don't see that. You want to make changes in law enforcement? That's done from a legislative point of view. Do I believe that we need changes? Absolutely, I do. But police officers are some of our most valuable members of our community, and it takes a special person to be able to do that type of work. And when you keep putting that wedge between police and the public, you're hurting everything. You're hurting the police department because you're injecting politics into the police department, which our police department is poisoned with politics. Our school committee is poisoned with politics. That's why, I mean, the mayor sits on the school committee. Just like the mayor was adamantly against not having a mayor sitting on the PETA board, which I was for that. But right away, her husband was sitting on the PETA board. Now, last year, I believe he resigned from that. I know he did. He sent me a message, and they finally did take him off the website. But I found that to be so hypocritical that she was so against that. That was part of her original campaign. But having the mayor on the school committee, I think is a massive conflict of interest. I really do. She was one of the deciding votes that made Joe Curtis our superintendent when we had an opportunity to make real change, and we're seeing disaster in our schools right now. But anyway. It's too much politics. It's too much politics, and we need to somehow figure out how to heal this and bring community back. I think school resource officers, especially at Taconic with the data we're looking at, I can't believe we're going to wait and keep letting this escalate, and we're going to keep losing teachers, and we're going to keep losing students. It's horrible what's happening. And we're going to put a study group together. Unbelievable. When we should have resource officers engaging with our children, we should have the Police Athletic League up and going to build a healthy relationship. Police are an important part of your community. To me, you look at the top of the list where it should be in society should be teachers, number one. They're teaching the future. They're one of the most important ones. And then medical, doctors, nurses, anyone in the medical field, CNAs, the whole gamut. And then your police and firefighters. When you dial 911, the people who are there to assist and help you and save your life many times. Save your property, stop an intruder. But, you know, I don't get it. Our priorities seem to be backwards, and rather than healing the community, we have politicians who continue to put that wedge in there. So I'm going to do another video on that issue separately, but that's how I feel about that. So that is it for now. I'll have another video out tomorrow. I'm doing a special video tomorrow on balderdash, so which is an important issue to me, and I think it's an important place for all of us. And many of you are familiar, I'm sure, with Balderdash Cellars, which is a winery right on the Pittsfield-Richmond line at Richmond Pond. So anyway, that is it for now. Pay attention to your candidates. I have more interviews coming up. Today I'll be putting one out with Karen Kalinowski, but and there'll be more through the week. I have a whole bunch scheduled. So that's it for now. Everyone have a great day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow.